Well, hello there. So we have come to the proper beginning of David's kingship. We're in 2 Samuel 5. Ishbosheth has been murdered by his own men as they saw the scales of power dipping in David's direction. They took the law into their own hands and killed Ishbosheth 2 years after the death of Saul. David is in Hebron. He rules in Hebron for 7.5 years. Hebron was an obvious capital city for David to begin with. And the reason for that was because Jerusalem was not was still in the hands of the Jebusites. Jerusalem, it says in Joshua chapter 15:63, but the Jebusites, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the people of Judah, could not drive out. So the Jebusites dwelt with the people of Judah at Jerusalem to this day. And that's in Joshua 15:63. So David has Hebron as his capital, and he reigns there for 7 years and 6 months. It's wonderful when the people, all the people gather to him, and they say, they obviously knew what had been said to David by the Lord, because they say at the beginning of chapter 5 of 2 Samuel, the Lord said to you, you shall be shepherd of my people Israel, and you shall be prince over Israel. A reference again to shepherding. David was a shepherd. He was a good shepherd. He was a shepherd who had learned, with caring for sheep, how to protect them, how to find them if they got lost, how to keep the enemy from them, and he had done the same with the people who had sided with him. But at some point, and we're not quite sure how long into his reign in Hebron he did this, but he decided to take Jerusalem from the Jebusites. Now that's in verses 6 to 13, 15. The Jebusites occupied Jerusalem. It was a fortress. It was on a hillside. It was difficult to take. It had never been taken, and they thought they were so secure because they'd never been threatened by the Israelites who lived all around them. They'd never been threatened. They were so sure of their security that they said, the blind and the lame will ward you off, will keep you out. We don't even have to have the soldiers. Even those people who can't fight will be strong enough to keep you out. This is such an impenetrable fortress. And David sends people up the water shaft to begin the taking of the stronghold. And so he takes Jerusalem from the Jebusites, and it became known as the city of David. That's why it had that name, because he was the one who took it. In a sense, Hebron was the city of Caleb, because Caleb was the one in the taking of the land who took Hebron. But it was never called after him. But here we have this city, Jerusalem, named from the day David took it as the city of David. That's why it gets its name. There's so many names and things in the Bible that have an origin, and it helps us in our understanding to think why a place has such a powerful name. It was known as the city of David. And he builds the city up, and he becomes greater and greater, for the Lord, the God of hosts, was with him. And he begins a treaty with Hiram, the king of Tyre, and gets cedar trees and carpenters and masons skilled with the felling of trees and carving trees to help David build a palace in Jerusalem. And it says in verse 12, and David perceived that the Lord had established him king over Israel, and that he had exalted his kingdom for the sake of his people Israel. David has finally reached that thing that he was promised. He was promised he would be king, and now he is king. He is king over the whole nation. He has a new and wonderful capital. There's never been anybody else's capital before him. And he is established. And the reality that the years of racing around, chasing and being a fugitive are over, and he can settle securely in a stronghold. And the result of that is that he takes more wives and concubines. This was what kings in those days did. They took lots of wives and lots of concubines, and he has a number of children born to him when he is in Jerusalem. The others were born to him in Hebron or before Hebron. He has a big family, and it's summed up in those verses. So we see David come to the fulfillment of his kingship and the beginning of his reign, and everything changes for him. He is settled. He's no longer nomadic. He has a kingdom. He has people who love him and who serve him. He is an amazing king. And so many of the Psalms are written by David about God keeping his promises. So I was thinking about Psalm 89, the beginning of Psalm 89. I will sing of thy steadfast love, O Lord, forever. With my mouth I will proclaim thy faithfulness to all generations. For thy steadfast love was established forever. Thy faithfulness is firm as the heavens. Thou hast said, I have made a covenant with my chosen one. I have sworn to David my servant, I will establish your descendants forever and build your throne for all generations. And he goes on to praise God for all that he has done, how he has been faithful to him, and how he has established him, and he has given him a promise that he has kept. And in the Psalms, that phrase, his steadfast love endures forever, is a prominent word. And in 1 Chronicles, I think it's 1 Chronicles, when it talks about how David established worship, and there were people in his kingdom who were given the task of singing and praising God all the time. It's in 1 Chronicles 16. With them, that's with the priests, with them Heman and Jeduthun and the rest of those chosen and expressly named to give thanks to the Lord, for his steadfast love endures forever. There were people whose job it was all day long to sing and give thanks to God, for his steadfast love endures forever. David proved the steadfastness of God's love over the years, keeping him, prospering him, helping him, guiding him, to the point where his promises to David were fulfilled. And this is that great moment when David becomes king. And many psalms celebrate that. But just that phrase, his steadfast love endures forever, is my thought for the day. That everything in David's situation changed. The one thing that didn't change was the steadfast love of God for him and for us, which endures forever, never changes. It's a wonderful thought. See you tomorrow. Have a great day.